Welcome to Leadership Spotlight Season 2, a podcast that shines the spotlight on L&D and HR leaders across geographies and industries. We dig deep into learning and development practices, followed by leaders to overcome skilling challenges, meet business objectives, and bring change at scale so you can fine-tune your training strategy, hone your skills, and be an impactful L&D leader. So lean in and lead on. Ambiguity is everywhere, in our everyday lives, in the workplace, and even in the very abbreviation that encapsulates our world of work today, VUCA. While there is a lot of talk on ambiguousness and its manifestations, it helps to have a know-how of the dealing mechanisms, especially in today's new normal brought about by COVID-19. Medhika Sood, Associate Director, Talent Management and Learning and Development at Uniphore, walks the talk on dealing with ambiguity. An L&D professional with over 10 years of experience across industries, she uncovers the various phases of ambiguity while sharing anecdotes, skill sets, and best practices to cope with awareness and clarity. Let's lay the foundation for the conversation by understanding ambiguity. So, how do you define ambiguity and how does it show up in the world of work?
Right. I think the topic itself is very interesting, especially given the COVID times. So I would begin this answer by saying that organizations are highly complex and interdependent systems. And at every stage of its life cycle, it requires fresh understanding of each element contributing to its success. To give you an example of that, fundamentals like core values of the organization or the structure, organizational structure, all of these things requires revamping over a period of time as we grow as an organization. So ambiguity at work can show up in many ways. I believe it can show up in fact, I've tried to bucket it in, two different buckets. It can show up either at a transactional level or at a transformational level. At a transactional level, it can be because of lack of clarity of either a situation, resources, actions, or outcome. For example, if you're planning to launch a new range of products in an emerging market, you will have to deal with a lot of ambiguity because of the situation is new, you don't have any footsteps to follow. And in this situation, moving fast with your actions and doing course correction on a regular basis might help you wade through your way. Some other examples of transactional ambiguity that comes to my mind, is also because of sometimes lack of collaboration, lack of open communication within the organization, time zone differences if you're working in a global environment, cultural differences amongst the team members, who are working together. And in such cases, simple tasks like setting up a meeting, deciding upon a launch plan, for an initiative, or very basic things might also get impacted because of non-clarity, because of confusion of who will do what, and can lead to delay in taking actions. At a transformational level, on the other hand, it can be an outcome of an internal or external changes that an organization might be going through. Here I can, of course, quote an example of COVID, right, which recently the entire world has experienced. It has just transformed the way people do business today. Not only how people do business today, but also how the current workforce has adapted to work from home. We've also experienced how lifestyles for individuals have completely got transformed because of this entire external threat. So organizational transformations can happen because of varied reasons, and some of the other examples that come to my mind under this area are mergers and acquisitions, or maybe if an organization is going through a complete leadership changes at a higher level, or maybe changes in the culture or value system of the organization. It can, in the short run, and maybe sometimes in the longer run, if not managed well, can cause a lot of ambiguity, complexity, non-clarity of actions and direction within the organization. While we're talking about how ambiguity can show up in work and what it can cause, it is also important to understand that ambiguity is not as bad as we think. Somehow we kind of put ambiguity in a very negative light. I would say rather it's a happy problem to solve. Like there is a saying that we don't grow when things are easy, we rather grow when we face challenges. So solving for ambiguity gives us an opportunity to pave our own path, be creative, challenge our own beliefs, and established thinking patterns, maybe newer thinking patterns. It can strengthen our decision making and risk taking in many ways. So it's all about how do we plan to deal with it, can reap a lot of benefits for us in the future.
Absolutely. I love the way how you classified it into two different buckets, transactional and transformational. And while there are some differences into how you view them as such, for me, the common thread, at least what I can derive, is that of working in the unknown. I'm curious to know, how do you manage when the future or even the present is uncertain, especially as a leader where you don't just have to stay the course yourself, but lead your team through the fog of ambiguity?
Yeah, so before I talk about how do I lead in, or wade through the fog of ambiguity, I think it's important for us to first talk about what are the emotional reactions that ambiguity causes within us as humans. See, ambiguous situations or complex situations, depending upon the severity of the situation that we are dealing with, can cause a lot of negative emotions within us, like fear, anxiety, impatience, distrust, and an array of similar things. And all of these emotions can trigger can trigger responses like fight, flight, or freeze, right? Which are our survival responses as a human being, and that's what causes a disaster. So more than a situation itself, how do we deal with that situation, kind of makes or breaks it. So the first step towards dealing with ambiguity is to understand your own response to such situations at an individual level. Becoming aware and then taking the rational approach always helps. So I approach this by taking and asking myself few questions, which is like, how much do I really know about the situation? Where can I get more information about the situation that I'm dealing with? Can I reach out to somebody who's possibly already dealt with it and can give me some guidance, or throw some light on few things that possibly I'm not aware of? Right? What all resources do I have to manage it at my level, or whom all can I pull in to kind of form a core team to see how do we deal with it? How do I utilize the strengths of people who are around me to kind of wade through the situation that we are in? What all dependencies do I have, and how do I effectively manage it? uh, how well can I predict the results of the options that I have? And first of all, have I really explored all the options in the first place? Am I open to all the options? Have I looked at everything that's possible that we can do, or am I kind of applying my judgments or being biased towards something and possibly not looking at an option which can be the most feasible one to deal with this situation? And above all, asking myself you know asking myself around my own beliefs and maybe my past decisions, is there a scope for me to reflect and understand and learn something out of it? And on the top of it, I think another thing that I would recommend and do is to kind of evaluate if there is a scope for me to learn something new, adapt a new skill or build a new skill to kind of deal with the current situation. So these are few questions that come to my mind, when I come across any ambiguous or complex situations. And of course, as I said, the first step is to first let your uh, flight, freeze, or fight responses to calm down, right? First to kind of anchor yourself emotionally, accept what you're really feeling, and then acknowledge that it's okay to feel that, but a solution to the problem is beyond the feeling that you're feeling. Other things that I believe comes handy for managing ambiguous situations at workplace are the organizational values, policies, mechanisms, etc. All of these guides you through decision making and acts like a navigator during the unclear situations or times. Now, one of the example that comes to my mind to kind of elaborate this more is, say you have come across an opportunity to partner with your family or friends as a consultant. While it's a great opportunity and it will give you a lot of exposure and scope to practice some of the acquired skills that you have in a sandboxed environment, because ultimately it's your friend or family's business and you're just helping them, but it requires you to use some of your organizational knowledge or resources. Will you do that? So, in such a situation, you have a choice to make a decision. And if you're feeling confused whether you should do it or you should not do it, the best or the safest thing to do is to go back to your workplace policies, and guidelines, which will call about, how can you engage or cannot engage with other sources of work while you're working in the same organization, and will help you take the right decision that does not lead to any conflict of interests or integrity. So I do believe that organizations are well equipped in managing such situations, be it at a transactional or a transformational level. It's only about stepping back and creating and asking yourself those list of questions to see if you have gathered enough information about the situation, if you've gathered enough information about the action and the results of those actions that you possibly are planning to take.
All practical tips there, Medhika, and a bit about neuroscience and our human brain, because you touched upon our fight, flight, and freeze response. That the human brain seeks and thrives in the comfort of the known. And the very essence of what we're talking about today, ambiguity, is a foreign concept to our human brain, because anything out of the known for us is perceived as a threat. And we ideally would like everything to be in the known zone and less things in the unknown zone. So there's a lot of things that we have to overcome. I love that you gave us some practical to-dos that we can go through to deal with ambiguity. And to me, this sounds like not just having a mindset, but also a skill set. So what key skills do you think are needed to deal with ambiguity, and how can people cultivate them?
Yes, Pranjal, absolutely. Very important. So, as I said, the solution to any problem starts with self, right? And hence, the first and foremost thing to do would be to understand who you really are. What are your emotional triggers? What are your first responses to any such situation, either at personal or professional level? Have you identified the negative and the positive voices inside your own head? Have you been able to identify your own thinking patterns? What is your comfort responses of solving different problems in life in general? Because your responses that you're comfortable with kind of triggers the first when you deal with any situation which calls for crisis. So understanding your own emotional and rational anchors, I believe, would be the first step towards solving this problem. Apart from the most critical thing, that is building self-awareness, I would recommend to develop critical and design thinking, understanding the systemic way of working in an organization, or even in your personal life, understanding the systemic way of dealing with life, understanding what all things can be impacting you at what all levels, developing a sense of empathy towards each other, and kind of seeking to understand the other person before you expect the other one to understand you. So I think these are few things which are very important. And then I would add on to the list with saying, building on analytical thing and analytical skills, and developing a very deep level understanding of your own business. That can include understanding your products or your services, or whatever your business is into, your customers, your industry, your competition, and geographies that you operate out of. The more understanding that you have about your own environment, about what you really working towards, what goals are you working towards, the better the clarity, the easier it would be, for you to kind of make certain decisions, either in your personal life or in your professional life. Having a growth mindset, again, is very important. Ability to question your own beliefs, your past decisions, developing different thinking patterns. As I said, that as humans, we have comfortable zones of solving problems in a certain way. So have we identified our comfort of how do we really solve 80% of the problems or 70% of the problems in whatever manner we solve them for? So what are those comfort thinking patterns, and can we break them and build new thinking patterns? For example, can we start thinking with constraints and without constraints for the same situations, and see what different results can we get out of it? Or maybe thinking basis data or without data, assuming sometimes that, okay, what if we don't have data in this situation, and then what do we do? So basically, kind of creating scenarios for yourself in situations which you're comfortable dealing with right now, to build your mental muscles around different thinking patterns, which can come handy for you, in the situations that you might want to deal later in life. Again, repeating, but very important, is strategic or systemic thinking. Today, one of the things that I have observed is, when we solve for one problem, we become myopic in solving that one particular problem, and we don't understand that how the solution to that problem can cause another problem for something else, either in your personal life or in your professional life. So having that systemic view, being able to connect the dots and see that one of the actions can have, say, ABC positive as responses or outcomes, while it can also have D and E as a negative outcome. And is that negative outcome manageable? Would we be okay with that? Or will that D and E, which is a negative outcome, is going to impact, say, something else within the ecosystem drastically, and might solve our problem but will create a bigger problem in the longer run for something else? So having that systemic view and being able to connect the dots, I think, are very, very important skills that we need to develop. At the same time, ability to think global but act local. I think, again, it ties back to being able to have a big picture view or a systemic view. But it's important that in today's world, we go beyond what we really are working for, and see how we are connected with the rest of the world, with the rest of the teams, departments, or maybe if you're talking about the family, then how are we connected with the rest of the family? What influence do we have on others, and what influence do they have on us? Kind of gauging all of this all together. So to sum it up, I would say, self-awareness, critical thinking, design thinking, analytical skills, developing different thinking patterns and varied thinking patterns to build them as tool for yourself for the longer run, and being inclusive, developing a sense of inclusion and collaboration. I think a few things that are top of my mind to develop to deal with ambiguity in the longer run.
That's a comprehensive list of skills you're given there, Medhika. I'm just curious to know, where does resilience fit in? Because the way I look at ambiguity, there's going to be a lot of failure associated with what you try to do, even within the constraints, outside the constraints, using all the analytical skills, all the critical thinking skills. I'm sure there's going to be failure at one point in time. How do you think resilience fits in?
Excellent question, Pranjal. So yes, resilience. Resilience is your ability to bounce back, and bounce back faster and with complete emotional anchoring. That means when you're resilient, you don't sit back and feel bad about what happened. You rather look at what is next and how can I work towards it. So if we look at some of the skills that I spoke about, which is thinking patterns, or being your ability to think backwards from others, developing a sense of empathy, seeking to understand others before you ask them to understand you. I think all of these things will contribute to resilience building as well, because with all of these skills, what you're doing is you're creating a map for yourself wherein you are becoming fully aware of what you're getting into. what is the situation, what action you're taking. With that action, what are the results that you can expect, whether that be positive or negative. And if that's negative, then how would you further deal with it, right? No doubt that there can be times we're not gods, we're human beings. There can be times that whatever we've mapped out for ourselves, it may go wrong, it may not turn out the way we want to. So in those situations, it's always good to kind of pick up the situation, do a bit of dissection, understand what went wrong, what is the learning that you can draw out of it, and then move ahead with the next course of action. So fail fast is something that I would say, again, as a thinking pattern that we might want to build resilience.
I agree, and it's something that we all need to cultivate. And speaking of cultivating, it's only right, I think, to dig deeper into employee training and development. After all, there is nothing we cannot learn. So, do you think L&D interventions can address ambiguity? Let's say the skills that we listed, do you think L&D can do that effectively? And if yes, I would love to hear some best practices that organizations can put into practice for their workforce.
Yes, L&D does play a very important role, and L&D interventions can be very supportive for organizational learning, growth, sustainability, and culture assimilation, especially now, right, when the ways of learning have changed. Today, employees are not dependent on classroom sessions only. Of course, that will continue to remain one of the most important vehicles to drive learning, and especially to drive group learning and collaborative learning. However, today we are dealing with fast-paced generation, who look for quick fixes and are prompt at finding their own solutions. They display ambition, confidence, optimism, and a capacity for a high-level cooperative work. So, and of course, I believe instant gratification is the key word that drives motivation amongst today's learners. So, with these characteristics, you can't wait to create perfect solutions and get your learners to consume, the learning material over months or only in the classrooms. So today, L&D plays, I think, a very, very important role and a very heavy responsibility to capture the moments of learning. I believe that's very important, right? Today, we need to consider organizations itself as a learning channel altogether. As L&D resources, we need to kind of prepare our employees, our leaders, our managers in a way that they can capture the moments and create learning moments within the organization during different transactions that they have through the day. For example, if you're a sales employee and if you're going for a sales pitch and your manager is with you, your sales representative doesn't need to kind of wait to get into a classroom after a month of a sales pitch or a bad sales pitch, to get into that classroom and then reflect upon how that sales pitch was. It can just be captured in that moment very subtly, wherein after the conversation or even during the conversation, manager can get into a coach mode, can drive the conversation in a different manner, and after the conversation help the sales rep do a bit of reflection and kind of talk about how it would have got dealt in a better way. And similarly for many other roles. So kind of capturing those moments of learning is the key, I would say, in today's world. And so with this, I would say that there are other creative ways as well, to drive this learning environment within the organization, and that can be done through say by preparing capsule courses rather than doing full day classroom sessions. Maybe 30 minutes nuggets wherein leaders are coming, or even creating subject matter expertise within the organization and giving them the forum to come and talk about their expertise in their particular domain. Or maybe people are so innovative that they keep on doing or keep coming up with certain ideas. Not all the ideas are replicable, but then if people are coming up with ideas, to encourage them to come up with more, maybe we can create a forum wherein people can just come and talk about the ideas and the impact that they think can have of their ideas on the projects or in the organization. At the same time, creating short videos internally, which can drive certain learning, certain awareness. about the organization, about the customers, about the product or services that we are talking about, right? Creating a scope for knowledge sharing sessions amongst people is what I'm talking about, all in all. And very important would also be to build robust systems, right? Robust learning systems which are driven by AI in today's world, because as I said, that today's learners are quick, and they have a need for instant gratification. So if you're on a sales pitch, again, I'm going back to the sales examples, but then if you are on the field and you want to know something about about a particular skill before getting into a discussion, you don't again want to wait or go back to a 30 minutes or a 40 minutes course to see what it would look like. Your system should be smart enough to kind of throw up some of quick 1 minute 2 minute reads or quick 1 minute 2 minutes videos on a search word or a keywords that we put on the search window. So yeah, I think all of these things clubbed together would reinforce not only the learning culture within the organization, but also the values, and will bring people together to walk towards a certain path to meet organizational goals, and of course meeting their personal aspirations as well. So in fact, many global engagement reports call out the positive impact of employee development paths on the achievement of organizational goals and employee retention. And hence, I believe L&D plays a very critical role in the focused development of people managers and leaders as well, by creating solutions that enable learners move cross-functionally within the organization. So I would say today it's not only about learning to get a promotion or learning to get your work done, but people today are very keen on learning varied things and expanding their skill sets, expanding their areas of expertise altogether. Today we can't expect a person to just stay in a particular role from the time they join the organization till the time they want to retire. We would rather expect, or we've seen these trends wherein people would rather want to gather the array of experiences within the organization, and that's where the L&D pitches in to make it available for people so that it meets their learning needs.
Great points there. Some takeaways from that for me were, you have to have learning in the flow of work. It can no longer be an isolated activity that happens just behind closed doors in a classroom or otherwise. Second is, you need to have micro learning nuggets, because attention span, instant gratification, all the points we spoke about kind of tie back to that. Social and informal learning are an important piece of how people like to gather knowledge and assimilate knowledge. So you need to have that component. And all in all, you need everything embedded into a very continuous and a holistic learning journey for the learners, so that it does not look like, and again, going back, isolated, thing that you have to do and check it off your to-do list, but an important part of your organizational journey. With that, Medhika, thank you so much. We've come to the end of a wonderful interview with you. Before I let you go, I would love to hear, what is your leadership mantra?
Yeah. So I believe, in learning from everything around us, I think there is so much to kind of keep picking up from living, non-living things, or, people, human beings, nature. I think almost everything kind of throw up one or another lesson, to kind of grow in ways that we possibly had never thought of. I also see that our own body teaches us some amazing lessons. And one of those in past few years that I have learned is that nothing within our body remains constant, right? The biological process itself keeps on developing new cells, new neurons, new synapses, and much more on daily basis. Our body also has a very natural tendency or a mechanism of removing the toxins and get rid of things that it doesn't require or doesn't serve the human system anymore. So with this understanding, I have come to this conclusion and this belief that growing new each day is very important. The only thing that is constant is change, and with that change, if you are able to reevaluate ourselves on our learning aspects, on things that can serve us or things that are not serving us anymore, and getting away from those beliefs or from those values or from those thought processes. I think that's where the key is. So growing new each day, I would say, is my learning mantra.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Medhika. That was a wonderful conversation. Some great tips and practical to-dos on, going through the fog of ambiguity as we have been talking about. And I'm sure the audience will have this great value and lessons to implement in their own organizations. Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Pranjal.
Thank you for tuning in to Leadership Spotlight. To learn how you can go from learning to leading, visit www.plethoralearning.com. See you next time.